How many of you celebrate something this time of year? Okay, that's quite a bit. And how many, this is a multiple choice question, so there may be many answers to this. How many of you celebrate Christmas? That's quite a few. Okay. How many celebrate Hanukkah? Okay. Kwanzaa? Okay. Solstice? Oh, that's quite a few. Anything else? Yeah. Epiphany. Wonderful. What's that? Festivus for the rest of us. Yes.
My anniversary.
Your anniversary. That's awesome. Yes. Chalaka. Yes, the UU for the 7 principles. That's wonderful. Okay, so here's another question. And there's 3 options here. How many of you have all positive thoughts? This is a time of joy and peace, and everything is awesome and great. Good. Few of you who do. I'm so glad to hear that. There's 3. How many of you have mixed feelings about the holiday? Some positive and exciting, and some stress, trepidation. Okay, that's a big bell curve there in the middle there. And anyone really dislike this time of year? Yeah, that's quite a few. That's very reasonable, right? I think sometimes this whole holiday season can feel like one great big oxymoron. It's supposed to be the perfect time of awe, wonder, and joy. And yet we're so busy trying to make it the perfect time of awe, wonder, and joy that we don't have any time or space for awe, wonder, and joy. I celebrate Christmas and solstice, and I often find myself caught up in the machine. And since we're UUs and we celebrate so many of the holidays, it's just that many more holidays that we can get caught up in, right? They are supposed to be holidays of awe, of a child of God being born in a manger to an unwed mother and announced by a star, of one day of oil lasting 7 days, of the longest night of the year and the miracle of the sun returning, of empowerment and self-determination of a massive group of people. And I think so many of us are yearning for that awe. We want to feel how our kids feel or how we felt as children. We want to live up to the ideals that all the commercials lay out for us. We want that joy, wonder, and awe. So we're going to talk a little bit about what awe is, but to start out, I'm going to give you a video on it. We're doing a very multimedia service today, yes? This is Jason Silva's take on awe.
So I think a lot about the contrast between banality and wonder, between disengagement and radiant ecstasy, between being unaffected by the here and now and being absolutely ravished emotionally by it. And I think one of the problems for human beings is mental habits. Once we create a comfort zone, we rarely step outside of that comfort zone. But the consequence of that is a phenomenon known as hedonic adaptation. Overstimulation to the same kind of thing, the same stimuli again and again and again, renders said stimuli invisible. Your brain has already mapped it in its own head, and you no longer literally have to be engaged by that. We have eyes yet see not, ears that hear not, and hearts that neither feel nor understand. There's a great book called The Wandering Brain that says that one of the ways that we elicit wonder is by scrambling the self temporarily so that the world can seep in. Henry Miller says even a blade of grass, when given proper attention, becomes an infinitely magnificent world in itself. Darwin said attention, if sudden and close, graduates into surprise, and this into astonishment, and this into stupefied amazement. That's what rapture is. That's what illumination is. That's what that sort of infinite comprehending awe that human beings love so much. And so how do we do that? How do we mess with our perceptual apparatus in order to have the kind of emotional and aesthetic experience from life that we render most meaningful? Because we all know those moments are there. Those are the moments that will make final cut. Only in these moments we experience afresh the hardly bearable ecstasy of direct energy exploding on our nerve endings. This is the rhapsodic, ecstatic bursting forth of awe that expands our perceptual parameters beyond all previous limits, and we literally have to reconfigure our mental models of the world in order to assimilate the beauty of that download. That is what it means to be inspired. The Greek root of the term means to breathe in, to take it in. We fit the universe through our brains and it comes out in the form of nothing less than poetry. We have a responsibility to awe.
So that's a lot to take in. But it gives you this feeling, right? And the part that's really interesting to me is when he mentions at the beginning of the video about hedonic adaptation. So hedonic adaptation is the tendency of humans to quickly return to a relatively stable level of happiness, despite major positive or negative event, lives, or changes. So our brain scrambles the inputs, both negative and positive, to help us get back to that neutral emotional space as soon as possible. But here's what's interesting about that for me. If we have a negative experience, it means that our brain will process it and it won't last at that intensity. But it also means that if we have a positive experience, even a very positive experience, our mind doesn't hold on to that experience. Instead, it returns us back to a level of stasis, yearning for the next positive experience. So we don't let the peak positive experiences in our lives live there for too long. We are constantly searching for the next thing. But it's actually worse than that. Sonia Lubiminski in a New York Times editorial piece says that hedonic adaptation is most likely when positive experiences are involved. It's cruel but true. We're inclined psychologically and physiologically to take positive experiences for granted. We move into a beautiful loft, marry a wonderful partner, earn our way to the top of our profession. How thrilling for a time. But then, as propelled by automatic forces, our expectations change, multiply, or expand. And as they do, we begin to take the new, improved circumstances for granted. Some researchers have equated it to being on a treadmill. You have to keep going and going and going and have more and more to reach the same level of contentment. And maybe that's what's behind the Christmas machine. We keep trying and trying and trying to recapture that wonder and awe of our childhood, and we just can't. We try doing it by buying more things, doing more activities, eating more food, drinking more drink, in order to try to achieve it, but we just can't get there. In order to let moments of awe in, we need to get off of the hedonic treadmill. We need to consciously put the culturally induced anxiety of the seasons aside. High anxiety and high awe cannot exist at the same time. They are mutually exclusive. Susan Beaumont says, Wonder trumps anxiety. We cannot be filled with wonder and remain anxious at the same time. Wonder is the ability to feel amazement, admiration, and curiosity about something. Wonder invites our best, most creative thinking. Wonder connects us with God. So that's it, right there. We can't have anxiety and wonder and awe at the same time. We have to decide which one we want. So how can we get off the anxiety machine and into the awe bubble, if even for a few minutes? It takes intention and connection to make that happen. But I'm going to invite us all to find those moments of awe this season. Now, I need to stop right here and recognize that I am speaking with tremendous privilege to even say these words, and I am projecting that privilege onto many of you, because there are some people for whom the anxiety, fear, disappointment, and worry is so very legitimate. While some of us are stressing out about how many side dishes to have with our Christmas dinner, others are wondering where they will get the food at all. While some are scrambling to find the right gifts, others are hoping that they will have the money to get any gifts at all. While some are worried about the family dynamics around the table, others are not even invited to the table. And for some, anxiety is a condition that cannot be turned off. It must be managed by medication and is hard to talk ourselves out of. So I acknowledge that. And knowing that, I am inviting you, if you can, to put it down and make room for awe. I want to tell you a story. We had a big storm about a couple of weeks ago. Anyone remember? They got the text message, 4 o'clock in the morning, tornado, take shelter, all of that. Y'all were around for it? Well, my wife and I were woken up by our dogs barking, because they were barking at the hissing of the wind going through cracks in our new house that we didn't even know were there yet. It was like this really high-pitched hissing. And then our phone started buzzing with the tornado warning. And my wife Karen and I were laying in bed talking about where in our brand new house we would go to take shelter. We did not get up to take shelter. We just discussed it while we were laying in bed. But a tornado touched down literally 2 blocks from where we live. Then we heard a crack and a loud a thud. Karen was up in a minute and she came back talking about a tree. I was still disoriented and kind of sleepy, and I was like, a tree? She's like, yes, a tree. And I'm like, a tree? A massive tree in our backyard fell. We waited until daybreak, continuing to listen to the wind whistle through the house until we could go out and look at what the damage was. And you all, it was an awe moment. The tree fell, it came up out of its roots and laid down on this concrete bench that we've got. It's like somebody just laid it down. The impact was taken by the bench, not anything else. It broke our neighbor's wall, but it missed our pool equipment. It missed other things that it could have damaged. It went into our neighbor's yard, but it missed a fence that they had. All of these misses were within 3 inches. So it was only the tree and the fence that was damaged. I was in awe. I was in awe of a wind that can make that kind of noise in my home. I was in awe of a wind that can topple an entire tree. I was in awe of how that wind picked up that tree and laid it perfectly down on that bench without doing more damage. And I was in awe of the birds who were totally befuddled as to where their home went and figured out other places to perch and to be. We chose awe instead of anxiety. And in order to understand that, you need to know that we moved here from Florida this summer. So now in Florida, we get big storms. We call them hurricanes there. But there's a huge difference between the hurricanes in Florida and the storm that we experienced in Arizona. And do you know what that is? It's the amount of notice we had. You get over a week of notice of 24/7 newscasting telling you how much threat your roof is under and that you're going to die and that you need to board up your windows and you need to take in everything from your backyard and put it in your living room and that you need to hunker down, whatever that means. And you need to sit there for days while the wind and the rain just whips your sanity into shreds. In Arizona, there wasn't any warning. There was just waking up, listening to the wind, having a fall tree, and going, oh, there's a tree in our yard. So I am aware of how lucky we are. Many in the valley weren't as lucky and had storms that had so many more consequences. But the point is that this situation can create awe or it can create anxiety. And honestly, there's not room for both. And maybe because of our conditioning and maybe because this was all new, I was in awe. So here is my invitation to you. In the tornado that is the holidays, I invite you to find the awe instead of getting on the anxiety machine. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's an invitation. It means to curtail the things that numb our brains so that we can be open to the magic all around us. It means connecting with the things that ground us and connect us through our spiritual practices or our habits or our hobbies. Take a hike, listen to some music, sit beneath the Christmas tree, have a cup of tea. It means letting go of anyone else's expectations and deciding what is good enough for you. And it means connecting with our child, our inner child, or inviting a current child in a non-creepy way into our lives and creating a vicarious experience where we can live through them. Paul Piff and Keltner in their book say about awe, awe imbues people with a different sense of themselves, one that is smaller, more humble, and part of something larger. Even brief experiences of awe, such as being amid beautiful tall trees, lead people to feel less narcissistic and entitled and more attuned to the common humanity people share with one another. In the great balancing act of our social lives between the gratification of self-interest and a concern for others, fleeting experiences of awe redefine the self in terms of the collective. May you find the miracle of the season. May it live in your hearts, even if it is not in our greater society. May you find moments of peace and wonder, and may those two even create moments of awe for you. May it be so. Amen. Blessed be. Ashe.